Hi, everyone. Welcome to Accountable, where your business is our business. My name's Dave. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, I think that one of the things that a lot of us are scared of, I think that that's actually probably the right word there, is scared. Is that we're scared of public speaking. A lot of you out there, you're finance professionals, you're working as financial advisors, you're working as CPAs, or maybe you're running your own business, and you're probably surprised at how often you are talking to people and you're out in front of people. And, we see these statistics all the time about scary public speaking is. I think I saw something recently about how people would rather face death than public speaking. So, in other words, we would rather die than get up in front of people. I think that I always think that that's an interesting thing. But the thing is that public speaking is so important. Communication is so important. And we have a great guest today that is going to tell us about public speaking and just the importance of public speaking and this idea of executive presence. Eileen Smith. Eileen is a public speaking coach now, but spent several years working for the U.S. Department of State, and so is literally a diplomat-turned-public speaking coach. And I have to admit that is a bit of an unusual combination, but you really have a passion around public speaking. So I think she's going to be a great guest here. So Eileen, thank you so much for being on Accountable.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, I think that this is great. So, I mean, I guess maybe the place to start is that, like I said, I mean, you have a unique background. I mean, I think, and so how did this passion for public speaking and executive presence, how did that really happen? How did that evolve and come about?
Sure. I was a United States diplomat for over 20 years. Through that career, I spoke in venues all around the world. I've spoken at the United Nations. I've addressed members of Congress and the press. More importantly, though, than the speaking experience in this context of being a coach is the coaching experience. When I was senior advisor to the Deputy Secretary of State, I coached her for speeches. This was not part of my job. I was a senior policy advisor. I don't even remember how we started doing this. First, I was coaching her for speeches I had worked on. Then she was calling me in for all of her speeches. I get a little pop-up on my screen. Eileen, can you come over? Yes, ma'am, I sure can. And right, she'd be getting ready for speeches at the State Department, the United Nations, the White House. She wanted to practice. She wanted to be a better speaker. And she knew this was the way. And this whole new career for me was her inspiration. She said, you could do this professionally.
Yeah.
At the time, as you can imagine, I was all, oh, thank you. That's nice. I went about being fully engaged in my State Department career.
Yeah.
But then when I started to think about what to do after, I remembered that she said this. I thought back and I realized I've been doing it my whole life. I remember I even coached my college roommate for interviews. I didn't want to rely just on my natural instincts. So I began to study. I studied this whole realm of how people present themselves. I honed in on public speaking, executive presence, and body language because I identified these as skills that affect the success of an organization's mission, how effectively people can do their jobs. And these skills can increase the trajectory of every person's career. At this point, I've been doing this for 5 years. I've coached over 2,000 people. I write for Business Insider and Fast Company. I've been in the Wall Street Journal. The absolute best part of this is making a difference for people, hearing the thank you notes. My speech went so well, I was terrified, or I got this promotion. It's because of the executive presence skills. These are skills that everybody can use, especially finance professionals.
So let's talk about that, because I think that for most of us
Mm-hmm.
that are going through school, we at some point or another we commit to financial services. We learn kind of the nuts and bolts kind of skills, the analytical skills, the thinking skills, and those pieces. I can tell you that, really, when I was aware of probably the impact and just the amount of time that I would really spend communicating was really when I became a CFO. And I had to talk in front of people. And basically I couldn't, be throwing around terms that, people didn't understand. Especially in accounting land. We love our acronyms, right? So GAAP and FASB and makers depreciation seem to come to mind. But, I think that, for a lot of folks, they're focused in on the analytical skills, and they don't think that they're ever going to use this stuff. Tell me how finance professionals, how does this sort of this fit into their job? Why is it important? Why should they care so much about this?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. CPAs, finance professionals find themselves in public speaking situations all the time.
Right.
Every time you speak up in a meeting, you meet with a client, or make a presentation to the big boss, CPAs are putting their public speaking skills to work. In many ways, client relations is about public speaking and executive presence. You mentioned all of the skills people learn in school and through their careers. Unfortunately, they're not often taught the part about how are you going to present all of that.
Right.
There's a story about Warren Buffett when he spoke to the Columbia University Business School. He said, in a joking sort of way, he would invest $100,000 in each of them right now in return for a 10% stake in their career earnings. And then he said, if they would commit to taking public speaking classes and working on their communication skills, he would increase that to $150,000. Warren Buffett said public speaking and executive presence skills can increase your career earnings by 50%.
So, but it goes beyond just like career earnings, right? There's got to be something else to it. Because it's great to earn more. Right? We all want to make more money,
Mm-hmm.
but or at least I think we do. But there's more to it than that, though, isn't it? What is it? What is it about public speaking that that I makes you so effective and so valuable?
It's interesting. I have a client who is vice president of operations for a large international shipping company. He had spent 2 years creating this innovation that reduced wait times and sped up delivery for companies around the world. His boss wanted him to go and meet with their biggest, most influential clients to explain what he had done. And so he would get credit for this innovation. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
But my client had spent 2 years in the weeds.
Yeah.
When he talked about this, he was so into the details and maybe not so organized or structured about it that he wasn't going to be an effective person to present this. So he was going to lose this opportunity to be the one to talk about his own work. His chief operating officer, and if we could all have this boss throughout our careers, we would be in a wonderful place. Chief operating officer brought me in and said, I want him to be the one to talk to the big clients about this, but not the way he's doing it.
Yeah.
I worked with him. We backed up. First thing is, what does this audience need to hear? They're maybe not so interested in all the regulations you had to deal with. They want to know, how is this going to affect them and what do they need to do? We start there, focus your message on the audience. Then we thought up, what are the main points they need to know? develop slides, not the ones he had with all of the words on them, but slides with images to
Okay.
show what this was going to look like. Then we worked on his body language, how he was standing on a stage, using the stage, his hand gestures. We reduced his filler words a lot. And we practiced out loud so that and we also practiced in front of an audience. We did a full dry run for him before sending him out the door to meet with the clients. He was feeling confidence. He did a fabulous job. His boss was ready to send him out again. This makes a big difference for being able to receive credit for your work and also be the person that your organization feels confident they can put out in front and say, this person is going to represent us.
And I think that that's where the value comes in, right? I mean, because it's not just about being able to, to put together ideas and things like that. It's about that ability to help those, especially those that may not necessarily be in your field. I mean, I think that, especially when you start to move up in the ranks, it's not just communicating with just your sort of close-knit group of finance professionals or whatever you happen to be in,
right?
And so I think that probably has something to do with it too. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. And you're talking about moving up. One of my clients is JP Morgan.
Okay.
I've coached 3 cohorts of vice presidents there. The person who brought me in said, I want the vice presidents, especially the recently promoted vice presidents, to be able to operate at that level across the organization. I've worked with these 3 cohorts on their executive presence, their gravitas. How are you talking at the big picture level before you get down to the details? How are you projecting yourself with your public speaking? How are you kicking off a meeting? How are you being persuasive? So that these participants could come out of these group cohort trainings with increased skills and a new level of confidence to represent themselves and their part of the organization with the rest of JP Morgan.
So you keep using this term executive presence. I want to kind of dig into that because I think that that a lot of us, I think that we understand this idea of being confident and we want to sound more confident, but I think you use the term executive presence a little bit differently. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you use this a little bit differently, and it's a little bit more than that. So maybe if you could talk about what do you mean when you say executive presence?
Oh, absolutely. There is a study. So Sylvia Ann Hewlett is the head of the Center for Talent Innovation.
Mm-hmm.
She did a big study funded by all kinds of top corporations, trying to identify what is this leadership factors, this it factor. What is this thing that causes people to look at a person and identify them as someone who is on their way up, as someone who is going places? She identified gravitas, this what you know, how you talk about what you know, projecting confidence, grace under fire, communication skills, which I talk about all day long, and appearance. Appearance is fascinating. There is a study between Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital that found people form their first impressions of your credibility, likability, and trustworthiness in 250 milliseconds. That is, I know, it is a quarter of a second. People have already formed their first impression of you because of your clothes, your grooming, and your body language.
That's I'm not sure whether I should be intimidated by that or happy about that. That's a lot what you just said there. That people are already formulating their opinions about you even before you've opened your mouth.
Yes, absolutely. And this means when you walk into a room, you're meeting with your clients, you're meeting with your boss, your coworkers, You want to be head up, shoulders back, making eye contact, smiling at people, look like I'm happy to be here. The worst thing people can do when they walk into a meeting, they sit down and they're going to wait for the meeting to start, right? So I'm going to sit down and tuck into my phone and do my emails.
Yeah.
One is I'm ignoring the room, missing all this opportunity to establish myself as a leader. The other thing I'm doing is I'm all hunched over into my phone. And this, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Amy Cuddy at Harvard Business School, right? She did the TED Talk on power posing. Her study found that people who stand in a powerful position, head up, shoulders back, good posture, for just 2 minutes ahead of a panel interview will be significantly more likely to be chosen by that panel than people who have not stood in a powerful position, which includes all of this business. I recommend people, if you're going into a meeting, you're getting ready to meet with a client. If I go to meet with a client, I get there 5 minutes early because that's what you do.
Right.
Inevitably, someone's going to say, "Oh, have a seat." I'm not going to do that because I'll be magnetically attracted to my phone, right? Which is going to kill my whole body language. I'm sending bad signals to my body instead of powerful. I will look around and walk around the office, look at whatever is on the wall. One is because it just keeps me upright. And the other is because it gives me talking points. When the client comes out, I can say, "Oh, wow, look, you got this award," or "I love that painting," whatever that is. All of these things in order to project that image of a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a lot of pieces to this. I mean, part of it is that, recognizing, the little things. I mean, I think all of us, we've all had that day, especially in the morning. If you're a guy like me, before coffee and stuff like that, you don't really want to interact with a whole lot of people. But when you do that, when you kind of close yourself off, you are sort of projecting that you're either, I guess, disinterested, or just at the very least, just not paying attention. And I think you also pointed out there too that, how you dress means something.
It does.
Um, I think that a lot of folks really, I think, maybe confuse that, because I don't think that what you are saying is that we all need to be in sort of, formal business attire, at all times. I distinctly remember I was watching an episode of Leave It to Beaver with my dad, and he was and Ward was always full suit, and my dad said, my dad loves that show even to this day. And he used to say, he goes, yeah, he goes, imagine that if I used to always dress in a suit, how you would feel. I don't think that that's what you're saying. You're not saying that, full suit attire is necessarily the way. I think what it is, though, is that you want to dress in a way, though, that's appropriate for the situation. Is that accurate, or am I misunderstanding?
Absolutely. Especially post-pandemic, a full suit, that's a lot.
Yeah.
My husband's a CPA.
Yeah.
The other day, he went out the door in a full suit, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going." He said, "I'm going to a board meeting, and these board members are in their 80s, and this is what they wear."
Yep.
I'm like, "Okay, great, but you better come home and change after that, because if you go into the office, people are going to think you were at a funeral."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true though, right? I mean, folks who know me, I mean, they know that I really don't dress in a suit unless we're going to like the big conferences or something like that. But I mean, that sends a message too. And I think sometimes that can be positive or negative. I mean, kind of the full suit attire and, it can mean, like, hey, this is, I'm confident, but it can also kind of come across as almost being kind of cold. And it's like, hey, this person, is maybe above you. Is that fair?
It is a tough balance to strike these days,
Yeah.
exactly how to dress. I can't say in particular what anybody should wear, because it all depends on the context of where you're going, what's the culture of your office. I have a client, it's a large think tank in the Washington, D.C. area. I provide a number of trainings for them. For the executive presence I did recently, they asked me, could I specially mention the dress code?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. I said, what are we going for? We're looking for a no crop tops and jeans situation.
Yeah.
They said, yes. I'm like, oh my. Okay. They sent me the dress code. In the first session, I said, all right, we need to dress like you're ready for a meeting with an outside official or a donor. Nothing you would wear to the gym, nothing you would wear to go hiking. Because it's really hard. And I think for the younger folks coming up, it's even more casual for them. It's hard to strike the right balance, but you want to look at what the other people around you are wearing and the people above you. Dress for the next job that you want. Step it up a little bit. All of this gets back to, and I mentioned with the 250 milliseconds, it's our primal instincts. We have no choice as a human race but to make snap decisions, because we need to know for our physical survival if someone is friend, foe, or neutral. It's this basic primal instinct that is causing us to make snap judgments about people when we see them.
Right.
It's that same primal instinct that causes the public speaking anxiety that people have, because it's our sympathetic nervous system at work, and it does not differentiate between a physical threat and a psychological threat. Our body's going to react in the same way. That fight, flight, or freeze instinct is going to kick in the same way if I'm going to speak as if I had a bunch of lions and tigers getting ready to attack me. Our body is not helping us out in this situation.
Right.
It gives the trembling, the shallow breathing, the sweating, all of these instincts the heart rate goes up. This also causes us to forget what we're going to say, because our whole body is getting ready to fight, flight, or freeze, none of which are helpful for public speaking.
Yeah.
When people come to me and they're nervous about public speaking, which you mentioned in the beginning, and Jerry Seinfeld once famously said people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy at a funeral.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. I hope let's just try to make the eulogy instead. I recommend the first thing is confidence building. This comes primarily from preparation.
Okay.
What are you going to say? How are you going to say it? Practice it out loud. There is an incredible connection when you say it out loud, rather than reading the words silently on the page or doing that quiet mumble thing in your head. When you say things out loud, you immediately find ways to say them smarter and shorter than when you do it silently. The first step is the preparation. Tailor the message to the audience. Practice what you're going to say and have notes. I always recommend that people have notes. If you're going to use them, that's great. If you're not going to use them, that's great too. But it's nice to have a safety net. And with notes, they should be as few words as possible. I don't love it. If financial markets are going to turn on what you have to say, then sure, write out the whole thing and read it from the page. But if it's something less than that, you're not Jerome Powell, for example, then make notes that are just as few words as you need to remind yourself of what you're going to say. That way, people can speak more naturally than when they end up reading, because everybody can hear when somebody is reading.
Right.
I like my notes in an 18-point font. The pages are stapled. There are page numbers at the bottom, so nothing can get away from me. I rarely use my notes, but I do like to know that they're there. That's the preparation. And then positive visualization. You're nervous
Okay.
ahead of an event. Don't go down that dark road thinking about all the things that can go wrong. Think about the things that can go right. Think about how well this is going to go. Another piece is reframing. Instead of focusing on how nervous you are, again, sympathetic nervous system, our physical responses to being nervous and to being excited are the same. It's about how we feel about them. Yeah. So tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited.
You said I'm sorry, you said a lot of stuff here. I just want to make sure that people are catching all of this, because I think you've said a lot of great stuff. So you started off with just preparation, and I want to make sure that we highlight something that you said, because this was actually something that, at least for me personally, was pretty enlightening. I remember I had some of our audience knows I went to seminary at one point in time, and one of the things that I had a professor actually suggest to me was, he goes, "Have you ever thought about just doing the sermon without notes?" And I said, "That is scary to me," but I said I could probably. He goes, "Okay, fine." He goes, "Do everything on one index card." And don't write everything out, because I was very much a person like, I want to make sure I get all the words right. And I think what you said here was really interesting, because you said, keep it short. Don't have notes. Don't not have them, but keep it concise and sort of almost like brain triggers, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
And so you mentioned that. You also mentioned about, visualization, because I think a lot of people, they enter into, especially the speaking realm, and they're scared of all the things that could go wrong. What if I get a question that I don't want to answer? What if I get a question that I don't know? All of those things. And you said, focus on the positive. And I think a lot of times, we probably, I think if we're honest, I think a lot of us, probably focus on the negative things. And so you talked about both of those things, and I didn't mean to interrupt you on the last point. But I think that that's really important, because I think what you're saying, these little things make a huge difference.
Oh, they absolutely do. I recommend that people have a pre-game ritual, something that psychs you up and gets you ready when you're feeling nervous for an event. And I say, and this, I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal about this one. I sing the Rocky theme song.
Awesome.
Silently in my head, either when I'm nervous for an event or when I feel like I don't have enough energy for an event. I don't want to be too up and I don't want to be too down. So I sing it in my head. And if it's a really big event, I will picture a parade. I'm walking down the street and the Rocky theme song is thumping on the speakers and the people are yelling my name and waving, Eileen, Eileen. This gets me ready for my important moments.
Is it just the comfort level, or is it just like you got to have something to kind of psych you up? Is it getting in the right mindset, or is it all of those things?
It is. It's the pregame ritual. The football players, we got a lot of NFL games going on right now. I promise you, they all have a pregame ritual, a special shirt, a song, whatever it is that they need to get their head in the game. And we need that too when we're doing public speaking.
I think that that's great. And one of the things that I think is also important to point out here is that the stuff that Eileen is mentioning are things that you can do. I mean, these are things that are very, actionable types of things that you can change in order to become a better speaker, in order to have that executive presence that I think a lot of us, if you're wondering where to start, I think Eileen did a really nice job of kind of laying out all the pieces and some steps that you can take right now.
Oh, absolutely. These are skills people can put to work for them immediately.
So let me ask you. I want to circle back to something because this is something that I think all of us dread, especially if you're up there. And so, a lot of finance professionals, you're the subject matter expert, okay?
Mhm.
Especially whether you're talking in front of board members or you're talking in front of the company or anything like that. You're oftentimes kind of a subject matter expert. What happens if you get a question that you don't want to answer? Is there a strategy there? Because I think that honestly, I think that that is where some of the fear comes in, is people are scared that they're going to either get something they don't know or just something that they just really don't want to answer.
Oh, absolutely. I published an article last week on this topic in Fast Company magazine. The Q&A can strike terror into the heart. All these people, and you have to have an answer. If you don't know the answer, it's perfectly fine. It's a legitimate thing. Start out. I don't want to see anyone, the first response is, I don't know. Back up a bit, zoom out, and talk about what you do know. In many cases, people, if you just say, I don't know, people will assume that person just doesn't know. You need to establish your credibility by showing what you do know. So back up. Let's say they're asking you about this grain of sand,
Hmm.
and you don't know about the grain of sand, but you can talk about the beach. If you don't know about the beach, you can back up more and talk about the beach town. You can say, let's back up, let's zoom out and put this in context. Talk about that. Then they're pressing you, want more details. You can explain what are the complicating factors. We are still studying this. We need to get all of the data in before we can crunch it and answer that question. Or I need something from Jerry's department on this, and I'm going to stay in my lane and defer to him on that question. What is complicating the topic so that you don't know the answer? Or maybe you just don't know. After you have backed up, established that you do know something, you have done something about this, then you can say, I don't know. And you want to decide, depending on who's asking, if you want to then say, I'll get back to you or not. If it's just an audience member, you don't have to say that. If it's your boss, yeah, I'm going to get back to you.
Then you might have to, right? Yeah. So I think that that's a great way to handle it. I also think too that I think a lot of times that people are scared that they're just going to get destroyed, in a very public way if they say they don't know something. I actually almost find the opposite. I actually think that people a lot of times kind of appreciate the honesty. If as long as you're genuine and and I think to your point, I think that you show them what you do know. I think if you're honest about kind of what's hanging you up, I think that people appreciate that. Am I wrong on that?
Yes, yes. It was interesting. One of the comments I saw on the article was, this is an ethical approach.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We're not trying to obfuscate anything. We're just trying to establish our credibility before we go to the I don't know. One of my clients is a princess. She cares deeply about humanitarian assistance. She
Okay.
wanted to engage publicly on it, but was concerned about the Q&A. We put a lot of time into prepping her. One of the biggest things people can do to prepare for a Q&A situation is to anticipate the questions. What might people ask you? What might people ask you that you really don't want to answer? And have a strategy. For her, we identified 5 different categories of questions that people might generally ask. We call these our buckets. For each bucket, we came up with an answer that she could give to share her position on that topic. We also developed stories and relatable statistics, and I want to talk about this relatable statistics in a moment. For each bucket, so she could figuratively pull these out of the bucket if she wanted to elaborate more on any particular topic. whenever someone asked her a question that was close to the content of a bucket, it doesn't have to be a precise question. It can be an adjacent neighborly question. She could pull it, figuratively, a response out of her bucket and know that she was prepared.
Right.
I did the same thing last week for a client who speaks in front of groups interested in her organization's educational programs. She told me one of the questions she dreads is when people say, "How many questions do I have to get right on the test?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. She said the problem is every time they administer this exam, it's graded on a curve with those people on that date. So she can never answer the question. I said, well, why don't we back up from that and say instead, we recommend that you learn all the information so that you can best apply it in your work rather than just studying to pass the test.
Yeah.
And she loved that response.
I think that this is outstanding. I really do. I mean, I think that that's a great approach, and it's good to hear too. I think a lot of us, we think that it's kind of something that's just going on with us. No, I mean, everybody feels that way. I think at some point. We would be remiss, however, if we did not mention that you have a CPE course that is available. I believe it's called Power Your Public Speaking. And so this is a self-study course that you have out there. I would love to hear just a little bit about that. What could folks expect out of taking that course?
Absolutely. It is a QAS self-study on-demand course that gives 5.4 continuing professional education credits. If people want to learn more about public speaking skills, this is a guide to preparation, confidence, and career success. The first half is how to approach these things. Prepare, organize, wow, establish credibility, and relax. The second half is practical advice. How do you make a speech? How do you speak on a panel? How do you do a media interview? How do you do a job interview? How do you do video conferencing skills, whether we're live, we're virtual, we're hybrid? All of these skills are included. I've coached over 2,000 people. I put my best advice into this QAS on-demand course.
There you go, folks. So much good stuff here. Eileen, if folks would like to get a hold of you, what is the best way for them to do that?
My website is spokesmith.com. And the course is on there on the services page. If you go to the bottom right, you can see the course, and be sure to pick the one that says for CPAs to get the continuing professional education. And you can write to me at info@spokesmith.com.
There you go, folks. Eileen, I told you before we hit the record button that we could probably talk about this for a few days. I think that we could, but I've enjoyed hearing just all of these things. I think that the biggest takeaway for this audience is that if you are struggling with how to be a better public speaker, if you are struggling with executive presence, there's things you can do about it, and there's ways to get better. And I think that hopefully that's exciting. Some of these things that you look at as challenges and things, a lot of folks experience that, and there are ways to get better at it. And I think Eileen, has laid out just some of those strategies and some of those things that you can do right now. So anyway, so thank you so much, Eileen. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for being on Accountable.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, David.